Good afternoon, folks. Welcome along to another Going Live with Global Science Show. If you've not joined us before, my name is Sam. Hello, I am the founder and coordinator of the Global Science Show, the monthly virtual science festival that allows you to share a little bit of science with whoever you like, really, on a global audience, wherever they are in the world, from wherever you are in the world. We're back for another half-an-hour chat today with another science communicator. We're going to talk about who they are, what they do, and why they're awesome. Should be about half an hour. I'm here with coffee 3 of the day. Look, fancy flamingos today. I'm feeling very, very fancy. It merges in with some of the nice colours in the background as well. I'm really in need of the coffee. I have a lot of things on today, so it's keeping me going. Already a number of people watching. Hello, wherever you are, if you're watching live, and hello if you're watching back later. Thank you so much for tuning in. Right, enough rambling on from me. We're going to get our guest in today. Say hello, everyone, to Fiona Calvert. Hello.
Hiya.
How's it going?
Hi. Good. My mug is way less exciting. I've got one of those like stereotypical mine, and then one that's sort of, my partner has one that says yours. One of those boring but stereotypical.
It could be like live, laugh, love or something on them as well.
It's like not that bad.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know if anyone has noticed this and when they've been watching, but over my shoulder here, I've got this thing in the wall. You might not be able to read it because it's quite far away. It's similar to Live, Laugh, Love. It says Live, Laugh, Lasagna, which is like it's a mantra I live by.
Yeah, I have one of those, the keep calm and carry on, but mine says now panic and freak out, which is just so appropriate.
Yeah, no, I think especially over the past year. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to start with a question I usually ask, which is, who are you and what do you do?
Thanks. No, thanks for having me. So I'm Fiona, and I am currently a science communications officer at Alzheimer's Research UK. And I started that job after I finished my PhD last year. And then as my side hustle, as so many people have now, I also freelance as one of the UK producers for Story Collider, which is a live storytelling organization.
We're going to touch on like pretty much all of that over the next half an hour because there's some really, really cool things in there. But I love the term side hustle. Like it's become so much more of a thing for like everybody now. But I really like the way that I think it's Hannah Ayub describes it as passion projects. Those things that like get you up in the morning and like they're part of what really just makes the day really good. More and more people taking those passion projects and convert them ever so slightly into a side hustle. Like there's really things they make a bit of money as well.
Yeah, exactly.
How have you spent your pandemic? What have you been up to?
I always feel kind of embarrassed. Not a lot. I have been really lucky and privileged. I have been working throughout, which has been really nice. It gives me some structure to my day. But outside of that, just watching TV. I haven't picked up a single skill. I haven't learned anything new. I've not done any puzzles. I just watch TV.
And I think it's really healthy for us to have the discussion about how that is fine. Like I have been on the opposite end of it, and I have done too many things. Like I've not done any of the like I haven't baked a single banana bread.
Nope.
I haven't done sourdough. I haven't done crafting. I haven't done none of that. But I've done a lot of professional stuff. But I've also watched a lot of telly.
So much telly.
What are you currently watching?
What are we currently watching? I just finished the Formula One Drive to Survive documentary.
So good.
And I love Formula One. It's like the perfect like marriage of sport and science, and I love it.
Really cool stuff in there when it comes to like, especially Lewis Hamilton's doing a lot of stuff when it comes to getting black kids into STEM. And using Formula One is like a big launchpad for that. I loved that documentary.
Yeah, it's so good. So we just finished that, and then we're watching Line of Duty, which is like the only thing where I'm willing to do the watch it once a week and not just binge it. I'm like willing to wait because I feel like it adds to the suspense.
Never watched a single episode of it.
So good.
And like I'm a big Martin Compston fan, but like just never watched it. Definitely need to, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it, but it's a commitment. You get invested in it.
Yeah, need to give it a go. So you said that you've been working throughout with Alzheimer's Research UK, which is like a fantastic organisation to be working with. But it'd be really good to know about what your kind of career path into science communication has been.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I finished my undergrad, and it was kind of one of those people where I just really didn't know what was out there in terms of like options for science careers. And I assumed that it was essentially one of three choices: you go into academia, you go into industry, or you go and do consulting. And like those were kind of the things that were presented to me. So I went and did a PhD and pretty quickly realized that doing research was like absolutely not for me for so many different reasons. And then had that panic of like, what am I actually going to do? Like, I don't, this was always my career path and now I have no idea. And I was really lucky. I did my, at the Wellcome Sanger Institute or the Wellcome Genome Campus, and the public engagement team there are fantastic. And I had loads of opportunities to get involved with different public engagement and science communication things. And I think through that, I figured out that I love science. I just don't like doing science. And science communication felt like kind of the natural progression of that. So then it was just trying to find a job post PhD.
Yeah, I was in a similar boat as well. That I really love science, but I don't like doing it.
I'm bad at it too, and like that's okay.
Yeah,
Like,
I've been thinking about the same. I'm really bad at it, and
yeah.
you're right. It is okay.
hmm
I've been putting together a comedy set at the moment, which I'm doing next week, and it's going to be about how I'm a really bad zoologist, which is my background, and all the things that have just told me, like, yeah, you love it, you're really interested in it, but you're terrible at it.
Yeah.
Like I did my undergraduate honors project, and like there was no stats in it, but still managed to get a high B. No, I
hmm
don't know how, and I don't want to ask how did that
Don't
happen.
question it.
Yeah, just keep it.
Yeah.
So you're working in science communications for Alzheimer's Research UK.
hmm
What does that involve?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because it's kind of a job I didn't necessarily know existed before I started looking, and I think it's a quite a unique position. So at Alzheimer's Research UK, we have both a science communications team and a public engagement team, and we do kind of distinct things. So as the science communication team, we both help our fundraising team. So we talk to them about the research that we fund. We provide donors with updates on research they might have specifically kind of restricted their funds to. So we work a lot with our researchers to talk to them about their research. But then we also have the chance to do things like talk about our research on our website or on our social media channels. And that's something that I hadn't really thought of as like part of that job. I have done some of the weirdest things for social media, including like drawing projects out as like videos, all those different kind of things I'd never really thought of as being part of a role. So it's really varied, and a lot of writing, which I think is something always to consider is like what aspect of talking about science do you enjoy? Do you enjoy writing about it? Do you enjoy talking to people about it? Because different roles have different levels of those things.
I think you raised a really interesting point actually to say that there's two distinct teams, that there's a science communications team and there's a public engagement team, which I think when you get into like what is science communications, there is a bit of confusion there, and like between the two different things. So how would you have a definition for how those are separated? I know they will overlap, but there's a real reason for them being distinct.
Yeah. So I think that the way I look at it is the public engagement team or public engagement is about getting that initial interest in
Mm.
a subject, and you're going out to different communities, and trying to like spark that interest in the not just the specific research that we fund, but just the topic in general and why funding that research is so important. And I think there's that, getting people really excited about research, which I think is something that maybe we forget, that research is really exciting and interesting. And maybe because we're in it all the time, we don't see it like that. Whereas I think that what we do as a science communications team is kind of taking that second step is, once those people have got that interest and that spark, how do we keep talking to them about the research that we fund, and how do we talk to them more kind of specifically and nichely about what it is that we do and why research is important. I think there's that nice kind of relationship where it's like a osmosis, things kind of flow between the two areas, but it's distinct skills, right? I am not so good at going into schools and talking about science. Like, that's not what I enjoy, and nor is it where like my skill set is kind of best used. I like writing. I enjoy thinking about creative ways to talk about a specific research project. So I think it's like a symbiotic relationship, but kind of has distinct skill sets.
And yeah, it is really good to have those two kind of like separate strands, really. It is definitely something that there is a bit of confusion about when people talk about SciComm and where the public engagement aspect of it comes in and whether it's actually the same or different. So I think you've described it really well there, to have that kind of public engagement as you're going out and you're getting that kind of two-way interaction with them, aren't you? You're getting them interested, and you also want to know what they're interested in as well, to then guide what maybe your team does, which is to more directly speak to them. So no, that's a really good way to describe it. And I love the idea of, you're saying like sketching out research into videos and whatnot, and there's some really innovative ways that I've seen, especially within medical research, to explain a subject or to explain research. So that must be so much fun.
I also love the idea that now we don't think of science communication as just something that can be done by scientists or needs to only be done by scientists. I think that people, artists and people like that come in and provide us with really unique ways of looking at these things helps to like foster that creativity within science communication. I don't think there's like a one size fits all. You have to be a scientist or you have to be an artist to be able to do it. It's, I think, working together. I think that's one of the other things I'm really interested in, is like how to bring art and artistic kind of angles into science communication.
And you're seeing a lot more of that now as well, which is really, really good to see, that like there's that platform for people to use that creative side to tell a story. Speaking of telling stories, do you see that segue?
That's a professional there.
I know, like you are a big fan of storytelling. That's what you said you do with Story Collider. What is the importance of a good story within science communication?
I think we forget that like so much of our lives is built around storytelling. It's what we do naturally when we talk to people, when we chat in the pub. And I think sometimes we shy away from that in science because we get a bit scared of, oh, well, it's about the data. I shouldn't be telling a story. But actually, we know that narratives are incredibly important tools to get people not only interested, but also to get them to learn things. So one of the things that we talk about a lot is like narrative transportation, and how like when you're in a moment and you're in a story, actually you're much more kind of susceptible to learning new things and kind of questioning things because you're like following someone in their story. So I think there's that aspect of it that is, narratives as a tool in science communication. And the other thing I'm really interested in is that science is done by people who have real lives and go through real people things. And I think that's another thing that maybe we've shied away from a bit in science is, oh, it's all about my data. But actually, if we show the diversity in science and who does science, that can only be helpful.
It's a really good point, and it is always really interesting to think of these people that are doing science, and what even that means. They're doing science. What does that actually mean?
Yeah.
But the fact that they're real people and they have lives and stories to tell, and just that fact that facts don't change people's minds. Like they don't change ideas. It's stories that really change, isn't it? So.
Yeah, we talk about that thing. I had one of our team in Story Collider talk about in a really nice way that, everyone has this like internal monologue that like chatters away to them, and that when you're bombarding them with facts, that monologue's still going. So if they have a kind of perception that something different, that monologue will be arguing and going, oh, actually, what about this? What about this? But when we're in a story, some of that quietens down. And so you have more ability to think about things differently to maybe how that internal monologue is nattering away to you.
It's always so interesting to think about. So what is it that you do with Story Collector exactly? What is the actual day-to-day?
Yeah. So it's a really, I mean, I'm biased. It's a really amazing organization. So Story Collider itself is a not-for-profit organization based in the US. And essentially they run live storytelling shows. So I don't know if you've heard of things like The Moth, but it's essentially things like that. Now we've gone virtual, as the rest of the world has. And so we run those, and those are in kind of cities across the US, but also Canada and New Zealand, and more recently here in the UK. And we take those stories and we put them onto a podcast to try and like widen the audience of people that can listen. And they're true personal stories and have some flavor of science in. And that really ranges. We have scientists who come and tell a story about their work, or people who have just had their lives touched by science in some way. So yeah, I'm one of the UK producers. We run back when things were before previous times. I worked with my co-producer, Steve Scott, and we ran live shows here in Cambridge. And it's just, yeah, it's a fantastic organization because it does put people at the center of science.
What sorts of people would come to events like that? It's like interesting to think about who's engaging with that sort of like event.
Yeah, I think that's where it's really unique. So because we have such a mix of people that perform on our shows, we don't just use scientists, we use anyone kind of that has a science story to tell, which nowadays is everyone. And I think that's what can be really unique because, you know, often in shows you get people who bring their friends, their family, people they know. But because we come and take people from such a wide kind of background, our audiences tend to be similar. Here in Cambridge, we run the shows at the Junction, and they have a really kind of great base of people who are interested in this kind of area, like poetry and spoken word. So we've had groups like that coming in. And I think it's just a really unique way of talking about science and scientists.
It's much more accessible than I would think than like a lecture, which is only going to bring in a very certain audience member. So given that flexibility must like open up that much more.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of those scary things when you're asking scientists to do something that they don't normally do, which is stand on stage. There's no PowerPoint. There's none of those like normal things that we rely on to be like, to help ourselves feel better. It's just you on stage talking about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like that can be a really like daunting experience, but actually really freeing, because I just don't think we get the opportunity to do that often enough and talk about how our lives impact the science we do, or how the science that we do impacts our lives. And actually, you know, that's a huge part of what we do.
It sounds like, to me, it sounds like a less daunting version of TEDx. And like, and that sort of like, you're given a platform and like, you're just talking about you or an idea for a bit without the slides, without that sort of kind of crutch there. Absolutely right. No, it's a really, really cool project, and like a really good way for people to either deliver a bit of science or to engage with the science in a totally different way.
Yeah.
We're getting quite far through the half an hour. This does always just go really quite quickly. So I've got two things I'd like to touch on. The first one is still to do with the storytelling aspect of things. Is anyone who's interested in kind of storytelling as a form for like science engagement or science communication, what would be your kind of top level tips for how to make a science story engaging or interesting, really?
Yeah, we have some really simple rules that we talk about, and that's to have believable characters experiencing meaningful events and having to deal with the consequences of those events. And then the other thing that we really look for is just something that changes. What were you like at the beginning of this story and what's different at the end? And, we often get scientists that ask us, oh yeah, but how am I ever going to integrate this into one of my scientific talks? I don't want to stand on stage and tell a 10-minute story about myself. I want to put some of this in a scientific talk. There are so many ways to just throw a little bit of a story into the science that you talk about. You can talk about, an experience doing an experiment that led you to generate the data, or start your talk by letting us know why you got into that area of science. Why is it that this area fascinates you? And then as an audience, we're already connected to you. And there are loads of great resources out there. Different things at Story Collider. We run public workshops now monthly to kind of an introduction into storytelling, which are really great. And that's one of the perks of this new virtual world, is that we can run those kind of across the world. But I think it's just about finding that moment of change and then bringing yourself to it. It's okay to let us know who you are and give us a glimmer of your personality or why you're interested in something. And that's going to make us connect with you and your science better.
So, when you say believable characters and people maybe not wanting to tell a story about themselves, as well as a character doesn't have to be a person, or it doesn't have to be a real thing. It could be a metaphor, or it could be I don't know, the character could be a bacteria, and the story could be about how this bacteria evolves, or the ways that bacteria is subject to medical research and whatnot. It's just
and we often talk about, storytelling isn't necessarily about, oh, I connected with that story because I went through that exact same event and now I understand, someone telling an event that I went through. Actually, what they're going to connect to is the feelings of that experience. Not everyone has. We have scientists that tell very extreme stories about very unique things that have happened, in field work and things like that. Most people haven't done those things, but they have experienced the feelings that you get. And so if you can bring them into that, they're going to understand a bit more about your kind of event, even if they haven't lived it.
Yeah, it's a lot of similar tips you get for a lot of other methods of engagement, is about make it relatable, make people feel something that they're going to feel in their own scenario. So no, thank you for that. It's some really good tips in there. The next thing is just more generally for science communication, and whether that is science communications like what you're doing, or just generally SciComm as a sector. What would be your kind of top tips for anyone looking to get into science communication?
A few that I think I've picked up along the way is, the first is talk to as many different people doing different roles. I had no idea about all the different kind of flavors of science communication and public engagement, and every role is slightly different, and it's figuring out which aspects of science communication or public engagement you really enjoy, and you're not going to know that until you ask around. It's also okay not to know. Having started this job, there are things where I'm like, oh, actually, I thought I really enjoyed this, but maybe not so much until you do it, and that's okay. My other thing is, don't be put off by different experiences. Everyone has different journeys into this world, and no one journey is right or better. I went to an event about getting a job in science communication during my PhD and was told I absolutely would have to volunteer for a year before anyone would employ me in this world. And immediately I was like, I can't do that. But then I spoke to other people, and actually that's just different sectors have different kind of feelings around that. And I think that there's no right or wrong way, and there's no right or wrong way to do science communication. Everyone's doing different things. And even if you just engage with one person who maybe wasn't interested in science before, you've had a successful event, in my opinion. I know there are lots of metrics around impact and things like that. Actually, if you just change one person's opinion of science, you've done more than you expected.
No, I 100% agree. Like one of the biggest bugbears of mine is the kind of metrics that you have to get a certain number of people engaged, and yeah, like, and again, that comes back to like people defining themselves as a science communicator or not. I think that some people who absolutely are doing it will never say, "Oh, I am a science communicator," because they're not in a professional role, but that
Hmm.
still doesn't mean that you're not a science communicator in some form.
Yeah. And
Um,
almost the opposite. When I made the decision to leave research, part of my whole thing was about, oh, yeah, it's awful because it's so kind of self-centered, but like that idea that I was leaving science and I wasn't going to be a scientist anymore, and I'm not a research. I'm still a scientist. I just do science a little differently. I still consider myself to be in science, and I think that there's a lot of stigma around what is a better or job, or if you're leaving your PhD for an alternative career, which I really dislike that phrase, because I'm still a scientist. This career is an alternative. It's just the career that suited me, and we're just as important to the research world as the people doing the work on the lab benches.
100%. It just adds to the kind of toxic culture that you get within academia at times. That is, if you don't stay here, you don't like go into a postdoc, then you failed.
Hmm.
Not even remotely true. Like I still consider myself a scientist, even though
Yeah,
I kind of checked out from the academic world at undergrad. I still do a
yeah,
lot of stuff. I still do research. It
yeah,
might not be what's considered research in the same way.
yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for coming to join us. Like we are almost at the half-hour mark, and it's been a delight. It's gone so quick, and there's been a lot of really good hints and tips and thoughts for people to take in. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me. I, as you can tell, I love chatting just about science communication, about storytelling, about every flavor of this. So it's been really great to chat.
So if people want to continue the chat, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, I should have added my Twitter handle. I'm at Calvert, FICALVERT, on Twitter. I think I can pop it up. I'll retweet a Global Science Show tweet and add in there. That's tend to be
What
where I talk about my science communication work.
Cool. Well, what you've done by having that little like interlude has allowed me the time to go and get your and put it into a little banner. So there you
So
go.
professional.
And
It's
no,
like we
like
planned
just
it.
it's like just trying to distract people whilst I go and do something. So there you go. There is Fiona's Twitter handle there if you want to go and like yeah, find out what she's
Yeah.
up to and get in chat.
I tweet about science, story collider, and mental health. So add in anything else.
Yeah, whenever I describe like what do I tweet about, it's generally angry political takes, pets, and science communication.
Yeah.
Those are my three things.
Oh, I
Uh,
also tweet about how much I hate running, despite the fact that I run.
it was a really good like the last thing, and then we'll stop. It was a really good conversation about that the other day actually with Danny Rabaiotti, who was talking
Yeah.
about have you seen it? Yeah, about how like I hate running, but I still do it because it's
Hmm.
good for me, even if I hate every
Despise it.
essence of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hate it and don't do it. But I understand the argument.
Yeah.
Cycling much more my thing.
You got to
Yeah,
find something that you hate the least.
yeah,
I
yeah.
hate all cardio, so I picked the thing I hate the least.
That's fair. That's fair. It's my knees that don't like it.
Mm.
Um, thank you so much again for coming to have a chat.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Not a problem. And right, I'm going to use the power I have to kick you out of the room. So thank you.
See you.
Another really quick half an hour. Time just flies by. Thank you so much to those of you who've been watching us for the past half an hour. And thank you to those of you who'll watch it back later. It's been an absolute delight to have another chat. We'll be back again next Tuesday and Thursday with another two guests. On Tuesday, we're going to be going to University of Warwick. We will be meeting Phil Jemmett. And then on Thursday, we're coming back to Glasgow to meet Faye Watson at the University of Glasgow's Medical Research Council Centre for Virus Research. That's a big mouthful to try and say when you haven't prepared you were going to say that. thank you so much for watching. And again, if you want to be a guest, we will happily have you on. So you can get in touch with us on Twitter at Global Sci Show, which is where most of you are probably watching just now. And you can let us know if you want to be a guest. Definitely get you on for a chat. In the meantime, take care. Have a lovely weekend, folks, and I will see you next week.